Today's topic, Casey, is kind of a little different because I've had patients ask me, we want to hear more about you. We want to hear, it's funny, they hear different things on the blog, or patients, and they ask questions about these things when they talk to me about it. And I don't like talking about myself too much, but I think it's important because we are building a culture, and it's interesting because these blogs, as I find out, are more for dentistry as a profession and for patients in general. It's just not to attract patients to our practice. We're a resource for people in general to answer questions about dentistry. And this one's kind of the same, and it is a little bit more personal as well for my existing patients. So the topic is dentistry as a profession. In other words, would I choose dentistry if I were to start all over again? And not to hold you in suspense, the answer is yes, okay? I think that most people who know me would know that I do love what I do. I do love the profession of dentistry. And this is really to serve that purpose as well, because I'm always interested in keeping dentistry pure, keeping very talented and passionate and people curious about dentistry that I think would just make great dentists, or people who may not know that they may be interested in dentistry or could be a great dentist. I would love to see people attracted to the profession, to enjoy dentistry in the sense that somebody who loves the NFL, is really into it and wants to see it maintained. So that is my interest here. So dentistry as a profession, this may be helpful for young people out there thinking about dentistry, parents who are thinking about something for their kids that they may be interested in, or even dentists who are early in their career and wondering what may be a move that they should make. And of course, this is my opinion, and this is about my particular journey with dentistry. So it might be helpful, and you'll have to stop me if I get too carried away on a story on how I got interested in dentistry. So believe it or not, it starts in the 3rd grade. My mother was going through a lot of dental work, and I didn't know what was going on, but she was at the dentist a lot. And she realized that she was at a tipping point, and her quality of life was very dependent upon the dental work that she was having done and the money that she was having to spend and the emotional trauma that she was going through. In other words, she put a lot of stock in her dentist. And my mom, being a relationship person, really developed a great relationship with our dentist. And she looked at me and she said, if you could bring the type of happiness that my dentist has brought to me, that would be a wonderful thing for a young man to be able to do, or a young person to be able to do for other people. And she says, I can tell you one thing, that people, just about everybody, needs a good dentist and a good accountant. Now, why she brought up accountant, it probably had to do with the money she was spending on her dentistry. And I said, wow, Mom, that's cool. I think that's great. You really love this dentist, right? I'm like, how much do you love this guy? She spent a lot of time over there, And she just couldn't say enough about her doctor. And so it stuck in my head. And I went to my guidance counselor way back in the 3rd grade and said, yes, I'm thinking about dentistry. She says, you are? And she was kind of, I think in a room, not many people were going to visit her back then. She's like, oh, let me find some paperwork for you. And she gave me this stack of paperwork on dentistry. I read it all and just thought this was great, and learned about the teeth way back then. And so from then on, the story was, for me, is I was going to be a dentist. And it was nice because growing up, my parents would brag. Somebody would say, what's your son going to do? He seems like a fine young, he's going to be a dentist. I'm like, I'm in the 5th grade, but what do I know? But it was like a nice story until I hit college, and then things got serious. and the college guidance counselor there was like, hey, what do you want to do? What part of the campus you want to spend time in? I said, well, I'm either going to be a dentist, and all of a sudden the accountant thing popped back up, or an accountant. I didn't want to put all my eggs in one basket. She said, well, the two opposite ends of the campus, you need to pick one. I said, I'll go dentistry. That's how it happened, right? But as with most things, in my life anyway, when you're making a decision, there's a certain amount of analysis that is more analytical, number-driven, statistic-driven, information-driven, and then there's a certain amount of gut intuition. I tend to start with analysis just lightly, put my foot in the water, see what it feels like, and if it feels right, bam, I dig in deep, and then I do more analysis. So it's like a movie, right? If you're gonna sit down and watch a movie, I know within a minute if it's gonna be good or not. And I haven't seen any movie that started bad that gets better. They start bad, they get worse. A movie that typically warms up and then you get into it more, I'm gonna watch it to the end, right? So the movie of dentistry for me started great because I loved science and I really loved the people I was surrounded by on that end of the campus. They seemed to have some of the traits that I related to, which, back then it was a little bit more, and it probably still is now, competitive. I was an athlete in high school, and it was more high energy, what's the word I'm looking for? Type A type personality, right? And it's not to say that everybody needs to be that way, because there were lots of people that were not, but it fit my personality. And so as I go through dental school, it's funny because you start to think, gee, that the things that concerned me was I going to have the hand skills? And I'm saying this for people thinking about if dentistry is going to be right for them. I was concerned about, could I do the things with my hands that I needed to do? Because that was a question that dentists would ask, hey, are you good with your hands? I'm like, they would say, do you play any instruments? No, I don't play any instruments. Do you like building things with your hands? I'm like, not really. Are you coordinated with your hands? Well, I can play good foosball. I'm a good pool player. So I didn't really know. So in the back of my head, and I think in the back of a lot of people's head going into a profession like dentistry that is very hands-on, you wonder that. And then you wonder, gee, how much science is it going to take? Because I happen to love science, but it's pretty hard because I was in a fraternity in undergrad, and my buddies were not studying like I was. I mean, it took a lot of academic stamina, a lot of reading, a lot of comprehension, and you were up very late at night with a lot of volume of work, learning a lot of the sciences. And if you don't like that, it may be difficult to trudge through that part of it. But nowadays, you don't even have to major in a science. People are coming in from different ways, but my path was science-driven first, and I think the next best thing that I did was spend a lot of time in dental offices. And I would encourage, if you're interested in this, that is another way to stick your foot in the water. And it was a great experience for me because I would go to a lot of dental offices, and just like anything, some dental offices I would go into, I'd leave that day thinking, my stomach doesn't feel that good about this. And that's why you have to visit more, because I would visit other offices and leave that day excited. Like, gee, I could do this. I can't wait to do this. I could see myself in Dr. Price's shoes. And that just happens to be the practice that I hung out in and was my childhood dentist, Dr. Price. And the nice thing was, and this was when I say childhood, I didn't go to the dentist for a long time. I mean, I was actually in, I think it was late high school when I was hanging out in his office, and in college would continue to hang out in his office. And the nice thing is he offered me a job. I think it was like my first year of undergrad. And I'm like, gee, again, I was way ahead of myself, right? I was like, I already have a job that I'm offered as a dentist, and I haven't gotten into dental school yet, but it was a nice North Star for me to know that the path was, the destination was there and the path was clear, but there was still always doubt, right? So as I spent time in dental offices, and not just general dentistry, I spent time in orthodontic offices. I spent time with Dr. Jimenez in his oral surgery office. I spent time with Dr. Stubbs. I spent time with other endodontists, Dr. Russin, all these different facets of dentistry to find out what part of dentistry I related to. And again, it still felt good in my stomach. It still made sense. I could still see myself doing dentistry. And so as I got into dental school, the next concern was, gee, you know, am I going to be able to make it through academically? And the weird thing for me was where I ran into trouble with my decision on if dentistry was right for me was when I was in dental school, it wasn't the academic part. The academic part was thrilling and fascinating and very inspiring for me. I was loving every minute of it, although it was very tough, very, very hard. So you have to be committed to studying extremely hard. But the part that was difficult for me, believe it or not, was when we got into the clinic. And it wasn't for the reasons why most people think it could be tough. In other words, you think, gee, I'm getting the science part of it, I like this. When I get to the clinic, am I going to be able to use my hands the way that you're supposed to? Because what the underlying tension is when everybody's walking around is, okay, hey, you're great in the classroom, but let's see when you get to the clinic. Let's see what kind of hands you have. Nobody knows what type of hands they have because none of us, you know, I knew more about dentistry than most because really most kids didn't even spend a lot of time in a dental office. So our experience as a 19, 20-year-old, 21-year-old with dentistry was like yourself. I mean, you didn't have much dentistry done, right? What does a dentist do other than, hey, everything looks good, we'll see you in 6 months, you know? Unless you've had a lot of dental work done, you don't really understand it. So when I got into the clinic, my hands worked just fine. My hands were great, I loved it, and what I didn't do well was the organizational part. Scheduling patients, getting all my requirements done, keeping up with what was next, and booking the clinic, all the stuff that I have great staff for now. And so I had to, I worried about that because I had a tough time with that. It was a big game that you had to play, and I was not great at that. I was better at focusing on one thing and going for it, but when I would talk to my buddies at lunch, they'd say, hey, how many dentures do you have, what requirements do you have left? I'm like, I have no idea. How many do I need? Yeah, I mean, it was difficult. So I struggled in that aspect. Now the actual part of doing the dentistry, loved it. But I needed a secretary back then. I mean, and now what my staff understands is I try to surround myself with staff that complement my weaknesses. And that is the great thing. So if you are a little bit more like me and not so great at the organizational part, yes, that's one part that I had to trudge through, right? If you're not so great at the academic part, you could trudge through that too and catch up on it later, these type of things. So it's a different path for everybody. But the thing that saved me was I worked in a dental office as a dental assistant. And so once again, I had to put the North Star ahead of me and see where the path was that was direct. And I said, I'm going to get through this part because I don't see him having to deal with all this stuff. And he's enjoying the dentistry and he's still wearing the different hats as a leader, but he is hiring people that can help him to have a successful business, which brings up the next point. Dentistry, the great thing about it is you have autonomy. You are a small business, at least in the way that a traditional dentist practice was when I graduated, which was a private practice. And in a private practice, yes, you accept insurances, but you're not dictated by what the insurance company wants from you. In other words, if you are more of an insurance-driven practice, you kind of work for the insurance company. Not kind of, you do work for the insurance company. And so that part is something that I think if you're considering the profession of dentistry, consider if you want to have autonomy and if you like that freedom of having the practice be an expression of your values, of the things that you think are important to do dentistry the way you want to do it. If you have somebody else that's dictating that, namely a big corporation, it would not be for me. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people in this profession who have that almost by default and are not happy with dentistry. But I can tell you, if you enjoy autonomy and having the practice be an expression of who you are, it can be thrilling, it can be amazing. Because now, when I judge how happy or how successful I am as a dentist, it's really my ability to help patients solve problems surrounding their dental health. So time can either be your friend or time can be your enemy. So what I mean by that is time is all gonna go by for all of us, obviously, right? And if I can help people establish good habits and make good decisions, then time can be their friend. So as I've said many times, over a 10-year period, your teeth can be much healthier 10 years from now than they are today. And to me, that's very exciting because I am an optimistic person. I like to wake up in the morning thinking, what is the day gonna bring? Not to wake up in the morning and think, gee, another day, how am I gonna get through it? You know, to me, that would be maybe a culmination of a lot of bad decisions, and then it just accumulates to where you kind of feel like, gee, I'm almost going to have to make a lot of bad decisions today because it's now momentum as a snowball. With dentistry, helping somebody, as I talk to my staff, is sometimes we feel like Sherpas, trying to get somebody, some of these treatment plans, as I said to somebody yesterday, is, gee, we got to climb Mount Everest here. And you're going to need to realize that's going to take a lot of energy, it's going to take a lot of commitment, but we are your Sherpas to help you get there. And we have to help you understand how we're going to, what it looks like up there and where you are now, and kind of in a real way, to not sugarcoat things, because when we start to go down this journey, things can get kind of difficult. And so that relationship with people and helping somebody get there and seeing them on the other side of that is amazing. I mean, it's a nice relationship. It's a really nice satisfaction to feel like you're going to go into the day and be able to have that type of impact with people. And so the feeling I had originally of what dentistry was, of who a dentist is, of what the profession is exactly what I thought it was. It's a mixture of art and science. It's creative, it's analytic, it is professional, it is empathetic, it is very much impactful and considerate, and it is just about all the qualities that you could think of that bring happiness. But also, you can't experience good unless you know what bad is. So the struggles are always, just like any profession, the struggles are there. Is the anxiety high of patients you're dealing with, does that impact you? You know, do the stresses of running a practice impact you, of dealing with staff? All those things. But on the other side of that is if you can negotiate those things and have a habit of making good decisions on a regular basis, then cumulatively you wake up in the morning feeling like the day has a lot of things to unfold that are going to bring about that meaning, as opposed to the other way where all you see are the problems. So in general, yes, dentistry can be an amazing career for somebody thinking about starting a life with a family or whatever path you may have. You can make great money, you can feel like it's time well spent, and your impact on people and society in general is amazing, and the way that they would hold you in regard can be very significant. The things to consider is how the type of practice that you want to have and the way that you want to get into this profession and take it slowly, put your foot in the water, go to different dental practices, because dentists in general would be happy to have people and patients and people in general visit their practice and to open up their practice for you to step in the shoes of a dentist for the day and see. And hopefully some of these things that I've talked about will trigger something in people who may be watching this to feel like, yes, that could be a career for me.